Following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
By tomorrow, I will rule the world!
You think he's gone? He's not gone. That's the whole point. He's never gone.
Is this some radical new therapy?
You see?
Well, I must have not been paying attention when you were just talking to me.
Hey, Tom.
Trying to share it on Facebook, trying to get everything done. What's that?
So you never look at me.
All I do is look at you. All I do is look at you. Have you met me? Holy good God. Try and get this ready. Crazy week.
Oh, yes.
Crazy week.
I've been so busy.
I have to say, I was talking to somebody last night at the Taste of Methuen, and I realized that I'm almost back to normal.
Really?
Like, I realized last night, like...
When have you ever been normal, though?
No, I mean as far as physically. Since my medical issue. And I was talking to somebody that I hadn't seen since before that happened.
Okay.
And he came over and said, Tom, you're walking a little funny. Is everything okay? And so I was kind of telling him what happened. And then 20 minutes later, I bumped into somebody who said, Tom, I saw you 2 months ago, and you couldn't even walk, and now you're walking without a cane. This is great. And I went home and I was thinking about it, and I said, you know, the second guy was right.
Okay. Okay.
Dude, I started to lose some weight, but I found out that it's some meloxicam that's causing me to lose weight.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know. I randomly looked it up the other day and said, change that. See my thing on John Greenlaw? Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
That's awesome.
Someone was complaining about him, too, on the comments.
Everybody complains about him.
Some people
we got
just belong
Papa Pies
in jail.
coming up. We're going to get Brian on the next one.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I am muted him. I'm muted.
We'll warn you when it's coming. Brian too.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
The only thing is I have to be good because he brought Holly with him.
Oh.
And I've been secretly in love with her for about 30 years.
Yeah.
So I don't ever want to do anything to make her mad at me. I don't care
I think
what
he's
it is.
told me this. He's told me that.
Yeah. I don't say anything publicly I don't say privately. That's one of the reasons why people hate me.
You think out loud.
I do.
I respect that about you.
A lot of people don't like it. Oh, Papa Pies coming up.
Oh.
Oh, we can't vote for him for governor. I didn't hear one bar out here.
I'm still voting for him.
What are we going to do with him now?
I'm voting for him.
All right, let's get this show on the road. Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Tom Duggan with the Paying Attention Podcast. Hiya, Tom. Golden Seal Apothecary here on Main Street, North Andover, across from the Plush Valley Patriot Studios. We got a great treat for you guys today. I've got a candidate for governors in the studio. We didn't know what we were going to do for today because I'm sitting on. I was just telling intern guy, I feel like I'm back to normal now. We've got 5 stories in the can right now, 5 things that we're working on that are really monumentally big stories. And so we didn't know what we were going to do for today, but we had Brian Shortsleeve booked in, and I was thinking of doing like a double show, doing the show about our interview with the mayor of Lawrence, which is completely explosive.
Yeah.
People are going to lose their minds over what his answers were to some of these questions. And then I thought, no, you know what? That really kind of deserves its own day. Like that needs to be.
That would be for Thursday,
next
May 29th.
week. Yeah, for next week. So we did interview. Well, first of all, we get to the sponsors. I want to thank all of our sponsors. Our sponsors are awesome. Especially those who stay with us. And we do have room now for one sponsor. So it's $300 for the month. It's $250 if you're a Valley Patriot advertiser. So if you advertise in the paper, you get a discount. But it's $300 for the month, and we will give you shout-outs, and we will talk about you during the show, and we'll usually come there like for lunch after the show if you're a food place, and we'll give you some good business. We also recommend people on Facebook all the time. So let's thank our sponsors. Century 21 McLennan Real Estate. It's a seller's market right now. And I was talking to Matt McLennan, and we're going to get him back in here once the political stuff dies down. It's a seller's market. So if you've got a house that you want to sell, you put it on the market at 2 o'clock, and at 2:20 it's gone. But you really want to be dealing with professionals like Century 21. Matt McLennan's amazing. And they're not gonna stick it to you because it's a seller's market. They're not gonna come in and gouge you on all the fees and the percentages and all that stuff. The Zanny Pesci Law Office, Marston & Son Construction, EIS, Investigation and Gun Training. Tomo and Shake and Seafood, which we finally now have on the board after 7 years. Clear Path for Veterans New England. JG's Ice Cream, which won Best Dessert last night at the Taste of Methuen.
I'm not surprised.
Among our Valley Patriot taste testers. We're going to talk about that for a couple seconds before we get to Brian. Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors and Dave Consoli at Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors.
Who we missed at the bash this year.
We did miss at the bash this year.
We love you, Dave. When are you coming?
I spoke with him on the phone last week, right before the show, and he's coming in June, he said.
Yay! Okay.
So that'll be a fun show.
We should have lunch after. We should go out for some.
Yeah, we should schedule, we should go to either, we have to go to Salvatore's or Jocelyn's.
All right. I think we'll go to Salvatore's.
Yeah, okay.
It's getting nice out. We'll get some.
You can sit on the deck.
Yeah, we
if
can
it's a nice day.
Yeah. Let's go with him.
Okay. Who else do we have? Prime Insurance, the Doug Mercurial Law Office, Enterprise Bank ran into Christina St. Ange from the Methuen Enterprise Bank last night. She was at Taste of Methuen. She didn't even know I was in the room. I just followed her around for a half an hour. I just love her so much. W3ON and a free shout out to we did JG's Ice Cream?
Yeah, we already did.
Free shout out to Stadium Chiropractic, my buddy Dr. Romano, and 4-Star Lighting. So if you've got a business or you just bought a nice house, you want 4-Star Lighting to come in, do a light assessment, see what you need. Some people like chandeliers. Some people like stuff that comes out of the wall. You want to call Joe or Kirsten over at 4-Star Lighting, and they'll take care of you. So I got a couple of things I want to get to really quick. I don't want to take too much of Brian's time because he's running for governor, and every minute for him is valuable because there's not a lot of time. By the way, I hate that they moved the primaries to September. I think all the primaries should be in October like they used to be. What do we have? So we have done a I did an interview with Lawrence Mayor Brian DePina on Tuesday night. I'm just going to give you a little preview.
All right. You want me to put it now?
Yeah, get it ready, though. So just a little preview. So the subject of we only covered one subject.
Yes, we did.
It was immigration raids in the city of Lawrence.
Yeah, but you snuck in a little question there, here and there.
Well, but it really was, it all went together, though.
Yeah,
right?
Did.
So we did ask about the homeless, but that's because the state spends over $1 billion on illegal aliens instead of the American citizens that are sleeping on the streets of Lawrence that the mayor is having a hard time with, right? They're having a hard time finding shelter for these people because all the shelters are being taken by illegal aliens that are being paid for by the state, and the state's ignoring them. So anyways, when we had Juan Manny Gonzalez, whose interview will be in next month's paper, when we had him on the show, I asked him, excuse me, if he would debate Brian DePina on my show, and he said, absolutely. So before we started our interview with the mayor, I asked him the same question. All right, so before we start, you're running for re-election?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay. Are you going to come on the podcast and do a debate on my show? Okay, you will. So there you go. So I'm not even going to give you the rest. All right, so before we start, kill that. So I did ask him about the immigration raids of the people that are being arrested, the criminals that ICE is rounding up, that a lot of Latinos in Lawrence are crying about. And boy, did we have it. You guys are going to...
Yeah, don't say anything. I know you want to.
I know, I do. It's so hard.
You want to.
A couple of quick news updates. The city council in Lawrence voted for a new police chief. We have Mo Aguilar. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And we're going to hope to get him on the show. I don't know if he'll come, but I'm going to try and get him on the show. We've had a really good relationship with him, and hopefully he will come up. He's going to have to answer tough questions.
Okay.
Like, I'm not going to agree to a fluff interview just to get him on the show. If he comes on, he's got to answer the tough questions. But we'd love to have him.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll love to come.
We'll be civil about it. Taste of Methuen last night.
Okay.
We had our 5 taste testers. We had Tom and Lucy Fallon. We had Jen and Scott Mendes, and I broke all ties. And we found that there were 17 local eateries from Methuen. By far, a company I'd never even heard from, didn't even know exist. Quality Catering on Railroad Street in Methuen won. They had the highest score out of 75. They had a 70. Wow. And the number 2 was Harrow's Pies, and their score was 45.
Love those pies.
And the number 3 was George's Bakery, Jen Maroon, amazing grape leaves. And, of course, JG's Ice Cream had the best dessert. And, by the way, the winner of the Taste of Methuen, we send judges to all the different tasting things in the area, gets a free ad in the Valley Patriot for 3 months. So Quality Catering is going to get themselves a story and free ads. So we appreciate that. What else do we have? Dave Beauregard. Now, what did I tell you? I told you 3 months ago when Tina Conway, a.k.a.
Rita Christine.
Resigned as the chief of staff, thank God, for the mayor of Methuen. And I told you the day she resigned that DJ Beauregard was going to hire former city councilor Jim McCarty.
And he did.
Who I think was fourth from the bottom of his law class when he graduated. Couldn't find a job and is now going to be the chief of staff for DJ Beauregard. I was giving DJ a 75% chance of getting reelected in November until he hired Jim McCarty. Oh. And now there are serious people with a lot of money thinking of getting in this race that would not have gotten in the race if someone as divisive as Jim McCarty had not been picked. If he had just picked somebody from another community that wasn't political, I think he would have been fine. But
does the chief of staff have an assistant, a secretary, or anything?
I don't think he does, but I think there are other secretaries there that kind of work under him. So,
okay, all right. So maybe he'll be fine.
He can utilize. But we don't. Listen, I always say this. I say it with Mo Aguilar. I'm saying it with Jim McCarty, who I seriously dislike for a lot of really good reasons, all of which are political. I'm rooting for him. I'm hoping he's going to surprise us. I'm hoping he's going to get in there and not be what we think he's going to be and just do a good job. Because if he does, I'll be the first guy to write a story saying the guy's doing a good job, even though he would never give me the same courtesy, right? Yeah. But I'll be more than happy to do that. So I'm hoping that DJ saw something I didn't see.
Okay.
I don't think he did, but we'll find out for sure come election time. And what else do we have? Diana Gisoglio, we broke the story, but now everybody has kind of stolen our story. It's on the Valley Patriot website about the audit of the illegal alien shelters in Massachusetts. Stunning. We're going to ask our guest about this.
It talked about transportation.
Stunning, $5,000 for a bus ride.
Yeah,
and
transportation, food deliveries, and
absolute craziness.
No bidding contracts, situation that was going on, which is unfortunate.
I had 5 other things, but I really want to get to my guest because I do appreciate his time. So if we could zoom out and show our guest here, I didn't forget anything, right?
No, you got everything.
Okay, all right,
you did. You did a great job.
You know what I love about her? She would say that even if I did forget. That's what's amazing.
I would tell you.
To my left, to your right, is candidate for governor. He's running on the Republican ticket. He's going to run against that guy, Keneally, who I've been torturing on Twitter because of his love of Democrats. So before we start, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to have Brian introduce himself to the audience. Tell people who you are, why you're thinking of running for governor, why you are running for governor, and the follow-up question is, what in God's name would make a normal person like you want to step into this arena and deal with this baloney?
Well, thank you, Tom. Great to have me on today.
Love having you.
Brian Shortsleeve. I am running for governor. I'm a father of 3 young boys. I'm a Marine veteran. And I'm a businessman.
Thank you,
and
by
I think,
the way.
well, thank you. I know you do a lot of great work, and we can talk about that today because we got a lot of homeless veterans on the streets.
Yeah,
we do. And we ought to be prioritizing them, but we'll talk about it. But look, at core, I'm a businessman. I've been out of college for 30 years, and 25 of those years I've been in the private sector building companies. And I believe that we need a businessman in the corner office. Businessmen like me, we live in the real world, right? We got to balance budgets. We know how to create jobs. What we have in Healy is a career politician who's working her way up. She's never run a business. And when I look at her record of failure, and we'll talk about it today, you just go across the board. I mean, there are fewer private sector jobs in this state today than there were
people are
3 years ago.
Fleeing the state. Fleeing.
500 people a week.
They're not just leaving, they're fleeing.
Yeah, 500 people a week are leaving the state.
Yep.
There's only one other state that has lost that sort of private sector.
Can I guess? California.
It's actually Illinois.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, California's numbers are surprisingly good compared to Massachusetts. So you look at that picture, right? That is a picture of failure. I mean, frankly, it's free fall more than it's failure. New business starts are down. And look what's happened with the cost of living here. Under Healy's failed energy policy, she's cranked up our bills. Electricity bills are up 30% over the past year. And all that growth, you look at your bill, I got mine sitting right here, $300. Of that $300, about 100 of it's related to core electricity. The other 200 are transmission charges and all those state mandated fees. The renewables charge, the solar charge, the distributed solar charge, the EV charge. Those are state mandated fees, and they're the biggest driver of bills. So when I look at Healy's record, I see she's chomping at the bit to raise taxes. She's growing spending. Utility bills are too high. The result of that is people are leaving, businesses are leaving, companies are leaving, students are leaving. We got to turn that around.
Before I get into any of the issues, is there anything Healy's doing right? right? I know it's your job as the person running against her to talk about all the things she's doing bad. But nobody's all bad, right? What do you think she's actually doing right? Like, what if you became governor, would you continue that she's doing? There must be something.
Well, it was interesting. I listened to her on the radio last week, and she said, talking about Massachusetts, she said, people are leaving, students are leaving, businesses are leaving. She said, I can't think of a single good thing that's happening in Massachusetts. So let me think about her. Look, she's a public servant. She's worked hard. She's served. I
don't mean about her.
Yeah.
I mean, what is she doing? There must be something she's doing right. Because honestly, I got to be honest with you. I couldn't, on my way here, I couldn't think of any. And normally I can, I'm friends with all these liberal partisan Democrats, Estella Reyes and Francisco Polino and Pavel Payano. And I could think of at least 4 or 5 good things that each one of them have done. I can't think of one on Maura Healey. And I'm sure there is one. I'm trying to find one. I'm trying to be objective. I can't find one.
Well, look, I'll tell you, she has certainly acknowledged mistakes. Maybe there's something to be said for that. I mean, just last week she woke up on Tuesday and announced that the cost of electricity bills is out of control and that she's going to make a big pivot, right? Make a big pivot, and she announces that she's going to start making moves and stripping all those state-mandated fees off. That is an acknowledgement of complete failure. These are her policies. The reason those fees are on there is she's promoted it. They're scheduled under her leadership to triple. Just to put it in perspective, that's costing every family in the state, over $100 a month. It's $1.5 billion of basically state programs that are running through your electricity bill instead of being funded through the legislature.
And what's the name of the program where they're giving people free insulation, but it's coming out of our bill? Is that Mass Save?
There's a broad set. Yeah, Mass Save's about $1.5 billion a year, right? And that program, by the way,
for that kind of money, we could have built everybody a free home at that point.
And go back, 4 years ago it was about half that size,
Right.
and under Healey, it's projected to double again. That's $1.5 billion that is running through your bill. As governor, day one, I would cut those fees. We would cut taxes, and if the legislature wants to fund a $1.5 billion program, let them do it and let them appropriate for it. But it shouldn't be running through your bill because it's making the state unlivable. Think about working families that are trying to grow here and raise their kids here. I got 3 young boys. I want them to stay in Massachusetts. I want them to build companies like I have. I want them to chase their dreams. I want them to do it here. But at current course and speed, with the cost of living in this state, they're going to be leaving. So I think there's examples there where she's starting to acknowledge some of those failures. Last week there were 2.
One of my biggest problems with the Democrats, besides the fact that they all just fall in line and do whatever they're told, is that they claim they care about poor people. Now, I grew up in Lawrence. I've been living in North End for probably since 2001, so I've been here about 24 years. But I grew up in Lawrence. I know what it's like living in Lawrence. I know what it's like living in some of these poor cities. With the crime, with the cost of living, with everything, your insurance on your car. And yet, the increase in fees on energy affects the poor the most, because the guy who lives in North Andover, who lives on Bear Hill Road, who's got a $2 million home, he can afford a 300% increase in his heating bill. But the family that lives on Arlington Street in Lawrence can't. And I look at what they say they're going to do, and if they did what they said they were going to do, I'd be all for it. But they say they care about the poor, they say they care about the homeless, they say they care about the downtrodden, and then they do everything humanly possible to keep them poor. And one of the things that I want you to address as candidate for governor, as I did when Jeff Deal ran and some of the others that have been on the show, we deal with 300 homeless in Lawrence. There's 300 people on the streets. We have 1 homeless shelter, the Daybreak Homeless Shelter. They legally can accommodate 44 people. Karina takes in 55. So that's 11 people that the state will not reimburse her for. There's still 300 people on the streets. While the state's spending more than $1 billion, and I think at my last count it was somewhere around $2 billion, on illegal aliens, while the people who came here the right way, we've got homeless people on the streets who came from the Dominican Republic, started a business, bought a home, got divorced, his wife threw him out, now he's living on the streets. And the Democrats are doing nothing for that guy. Nothing. What are the Republicans going to do? What are you going to do to help alleviate the problem of homelessness in Massachusetts and find a way to get these people into rehab and reintegrated back into society?
I'm a Marine veteran, spent 4 years in the Marine Corps after college. I care a lot about homeless veterans in particular. That's a subset of the group you're talking about. There's over 600 homeless veterans in the state right now. Those people should be getting priority in our shelters. Look at our shelter system. That came in 1983. That was designed for battered women, for families looking for housing. It was not designed to absorb hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants from overseas. And Healy has completely dropped the ball on those policies. As you said, we are now 2.5 years into it, and I believe the number she put out last week for the fiscal year was $3.3 million a day. That's $1 billion run rate. With that amount of money, Tom, you could give every city and town in this state $7 million of local aid. So Governor Shortsleeve, day one, priority for veterans, homeless veterans in those shelters. Get the program refocused on American citizens who are living here legally. It's an important program. It's been a long time.
Can I beg you, though? Please don't make it a government program. Like, subsidize ClearPath for veterans.
Right.
Subsidize some of these nonprofits that are run by veterans. Because the minute you make it a government program, the goal of the program is to expand the program and to grow the people in the middle of the middle management, which usually means the people at the bottom never get anything.
Right.
So I'm just begging you, if you're going to do that, find places like ClearPath to subsidize them and give them the money so veterans can help veterans. I don't want to see any more I don't want to see any more government programs. In fact, I want less government programs.
Well, the New England Shelter for Homeless Veterans in Boston as a group historically has done a great job. So I agree with you. But it's about priorities, Tom, right? I mean, let's just step back for a second. This is a state, our state budget's grown by 50%, 50 in 6 years. Our population's not growing. Our spending is completely out of control. Under Healy, spending has skyrocketed. The budget has skyrocketed. Just last week, she put a hiring freeze in, and she said on Tuesday was the day she reversed course on energy. Wednesday was the day she woke up and realized we have a spending problem. Maura Healy is the only one to blame for where we are. She's hired over 3,000 state workers since she came in. She's blown up the state payroll by $1 billion, and we're spending at least $1 billion and probably a lot more on the migrant housing crisis. Look at the audit we saw yesterday. I mean, it's stunning. These are blank checks,
God bless
sweetheart deals. DeZoglio's doing a great job, and as DeZoglio noted, this is largely unlawful. I mean, this is sweetheart deals. It's blank checks. It's programs run amok. Complete lack of leadership. I read about a taxi affair down the Cape where I believe the state was billed $140 for a 230-foot trip. This is what happens when you have career politicians running the state. They're not keeping an eye on it. And I believe that state government's off the rails. If you put a businessman in the corner office, what are we going to focus on? We're going to focus on cutting taxes, cutting fees, and getting spending under control. And that starts with cost control. We cannot grow our state budget at $4 billion a year, as Healy proposed this January, and be sustainable.
One of the things that's making me want to leave the state is the crazy gun laws. I mean, they literally don't want anyone to be able to defend themselves. They want criminals running the streets so that they can increase government. It's, create the crisis so you can invent the solution to the crisis so you can be the manager of the crisis. And it's making me want to leave. What are you going to do to make people like me not want to leave? Because right now, I want to leave.
Well, look, I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. I know something about guns, and I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. And what I would tell you is we got the strictest gun laws in the country. Look at what Healy has done lately in terms of proposing new legislation. We don't need lots of new gun laws. We got plenty of gun laws. What we need is a governor that will enforce the law, right? She's pushing those things because she wants to appear that she's tough on crime. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is a governor.
It enables crime. It enables crime.
And look, I mean, look at the shelters. Steve Zaros, who's a terrific rep, known him for a long time down the Cape. He's been a real leader in the HALO Act, right? You see that what he's proposed in terms of law and order, a buffer zone to enable ICE to do their job. I would say, I'd say the same around shelters with universal background checks. Zaros has been a proponent for a long time of universal background checks. We don't do that in Massachusetts. Governor Healy's refused to do it. She's doing Corey checks, which don't pick up any of the crimes someone might have committed overseas. And at Hyannis, 2 weeks ago, there was an individual arrested who'd been convicted of rape in Brazil, and he was living in a daycare center. If we were doing universal background checks, we would pick that up. So when I look at Governor Healy, I see areas like that where she's trying to push new gun laws to appear tough on crime, and the reality is she's anything but.
Right.
I have a question, if you don't mind, from the audience. So John Regal wants to know: people in Lawrence are paying some of the highest car insurance in the state because of outdated data. Like to know what he will do to help Lawrence get out of the insurance blacklist.
Well, look, when you talk to families and small businesses about Massachusetts, about why they're leaving, the cost of living is the number one reason, and you hear a lot about utility bills. You hear a lot about insurance, right? We got to attack that top to bottom. Car insurance is a big deal. Here's the other big deal. I live in the world of small businesses. I've spent all my life building small companies, 25 employee companies, scaling them up to 50 to 100. That's all the growth in our economy. You talk to small business owners, and they would tell you unemployment insurance, known as UI, is a killer in this state. It's $500 per head per person. If you're down in Florida or you're in New Hampshire, it's like $50 a head. So there's examples for families and small businesses where the cost of insurance is way out of whack, and the result is people are leaving, companies are leaving. I mean, NFIB, which does a really good job covering these things, their surveys indicate that 50% of small businesses in this state are going to close or leave in the next 5 years. It's because of the cost of insurance. It's because of UI. It's because of the electricity bills. I'm an optimist, okay? I think you put a governor in there that's got a businessman mindset, sort of an outsider perspective, and a Marine's determination. I think we can solve those problems. But it takes leadership, and I'm not seeing it right now from Governor Healy.
I hate to rain on your parade, but let's say you get in. Let's say you win. You've got a legislature that's so far to the left that they think Elizabeth Warren's too conservative. How are you going to get any of these things past these people? They've got a supermajority to override any veto that you're going to do. If you were to win, wouldn't you just kind of be like Charlie Baker? Like, I love Charlie, and I really do. We get along very well. We've been friends for a long time. But he was just more like a speed bump than anything to slow down the damage that the Democrats in the legislature were doing. But the gains that we had, I don't see them. Like, they never materialized. By the end of his governor's career, you could look back and see that he slowed some things down. And my fear is that electing you without changing the legislature is going to be the same thing.
Well, Tom, I look back to 1990. Okay, in 1990, people in this state were upset. They had had enough. I feel a similar vibe out there right now. I've been out on the circuit. I've been meeting with Republican town committees. I've been speaking. There's a lot of energy out there. You know what happened in 1990? Bill Weld won, and he brought 16 Republican state senators in with that many new elected officials.
Holly and I worked on many
You
of
worked
those
on
campaigns.
that race, you know, and guess what? That you can sustain a veto with that. I look down in Bristol County, where I've spent a lot of time in the last 6 weeks. We're winning races there. We got folks like Kelly Dooner that are winning state Senate race. So I think this is that kind of year where people have had it. We are fed up, and I think you're going to see wins across the board if we got the right message and the right candidate. And I believe I can be the candidate to win this primary and then lead us to a big victory in the fall of 26 across the board. Elect senators, elect representatives, because people want accountability. They want change.
All right, let's talk about something nobody wants to talk about. You look at the city of Lawrence, and I grew up in Lawrence, so I'm kind of more of an expert on Lawrence, even though I live in North Andover for the last 20 years. The education system in Lawrence is abysmal. You have kids in Lawrence. The state spends 400% more on the Lawrence schools than they do the North Andover schools. And the kids in Lawrence, more than 80% of the kids who graduate from Lawrence High School can't get into a four-year college. More than 90% of the kids that get into a four-year college never make it to their second year. And yet, we spend more money in Lawrence on education than we spend in surrounding communities, Methuen, Andover, North Andover. It's obvious that it's not because Latinos are stupid, right? It's not because Latinos can't learn. There's another reason. I don't know what that reason is. I actually think spending more money on it makes it worse. But as governor, what can you do to equal the playing field for the kids in Lawrence to get the same kind of education that the kids at Andover and North Andover are getting? And we know that the money's not the answer, right? Because we're already spending more money there, and it's worse. What do we do to make these schools actually teach kids and measure the performance of the kids so that the kid graduating from Lawrence High School has the same chance of getting into a four-year decent college than the kid graduating from North Andover?
Well, I'll tell you this. I got 3 young boys. They've been in Catholic school. They've been in public school. They've been in private school. We've done it all. And I always think with schools, you got to start with the parents. Parents know what's best. And what I would tell you in Lawrence is you got to provide alternatives for families. If families want to try other things, if they want to try parochial schools, they want to try private schools, they should be able to do that. They should be able to pick among the public schools. So I'm a big believer that parents know what's best for their kids, and that sort of the one-size-fits-all approach we see in some of those areas may not be the right approach. So my answer would be more choice, more flexibility, more creativity,
charter schools,
more innovation. I'm a supporter of charter schools. I'm a supporter of independent schools. I'm a supporter of parochial schools. I think we ought to give parents the ability to choose, because as you said, there's been enormous spending in some of these urban systems. The city of Boston is now spending over $40,000 a head 28% of the students in 4th grade can't read or do math
It's
at grade level. Let me leave you with one other thing. And there's 10,000 kids on a waiting list to go to charter schools. So what does it tell you? Parents are voting with their feet. Kids are voting their feet. I would be a big proponent of giving parents choice and letting
the
them
ability
have
to have
options.
that money follow the kid. I've always liked that idea. I don't remember who came up with it. It might have been Newt Gingrich. Holly might know. I don't remember who actually came up with it. But the idea of if we're spending X number of dollars per student, why don't we give that money to the parents in a voucher and let them go where they want to put their kids? And good schools will pop up because they'll want to make money educating kids and doing it right.
Well, the other thing that happens in states, and there are states that are very active in this, is a couple things happen. Parents have choice. The other thing that happens is the public schools have to up their game a little bit because guess what? In a world of choice, every principal's got to tell their story. They have to recruit students, and all of a sudden, you might find in Lawrence, you might find a school focused on math and science, another one focused on history, another one focused on STEM, maybe another one focused on music. What's going to happen? It creates a competitive dynamic because all those schools, public or private, are going to compete for the kids. And at the end of the day, competition is a great thing. I'm a business guy. I've spent my life building businesses, and competition between public entities like that, I think, has huge benefits. What we know doesn't work is sort of the one-size-fits-all current model, whether you look at Lawrence or you look at the city of Boston. I think you can say with certainty that's not working. So let's think about creative things that might work.
Third rail issue. I'm going to throw it at you because at some point Channel 5 or Channel 7 is going to throw it at you. The issue of abortion, prenatal homicide, however you want, whatever word you want to use, both sides have their own lingo. You're running as a Republican. They're going to paint you as somebody that wants to bring women back to the dark ages. How do you get past that?
Well, it's an important issue. There's a lot of passion on both sides of it. In Massachusetts, abortion rights are guaranteed under the state constitution. Nothing I would do that would change that. I support that. I consider myself.
Is there anything you could do to change that? Like, would you be able to if you wanted to?
I don't believe so, and I wouldn't. I consider myself pro-choice, and abortion rights are guaranteed under the Constitution. So I wouldn't see that changing. Okay,
all right. How about funding?
I wouldn't change the current laws in this state. Whatever it is that they are, I think that abortion is protected, and I would not do anything to change it. My focus is really in this race on getting this state growing again, getting the private sector growing, getting families to stop leaving. That's really where I would be focused.
What's your number one issue? You're running against a guy right now named, and I keep forgetting his name, Keneally. I've been torturing him on Facebook for the last couple of weeks just because it's fun. What is your number one priority going to be? Why should someone vote? Why should a Republican in a primary vote for you over him? And why should an independent in a final vote for you over Maura Healey?
Well, look, as governor, I would cut taxes. I would cut fees, including those state-mandated fees. I'd get state spending under control. That's what I would do. I know how to do it, right? I've run a public agency. I've been in the business world for a long time. Those are the things I would do day one. I would bring the energy of a businessman and an executive to the role. And I believe that I will win this primary, and I believe that I can win the election in the fall. Our voters want a fighter, right? They want someone who's going to fight and do the hard work to win this race. And I think I've demonstrated that in my own career, whether it was my time in the Marine Corps, my time building businesses, or even my time driving reform at the MBTA. I know how to fight, and I know how to win.
You keep saying you want to lower taxes. The Democrat media will ask you, well, then what do you want to cut?
Well, I would look across, broad-based tax cuts. What I would tell you, under Maura Healey's failed policies, let's just take a quick look. Let's give her a score on that. Over the past 3 years, she has ramped up state spending to the tune of $10 billion since she started. $4 billion. It's insane.
It's insane.
And where is it going? It's going to $1 billion on migrant crisis. It's going to $1 billion of new state hiring. It goes on and on. So this week, Maura Healey woke up on Wednesday and said, boy, we have a spending problem. We got to do a hiring freeze. It's too little too late. She's proposed 5 new taxes this year alone. Tax on candy, a tax on prescription drugs, a tax on charities by ending the charitable deduction, even a surcharge on your excise tax. How does that sound, right? Why is she doing that? She's chomping at the bit to raise taxes because she's a tax and spend liberal. So
they're spending billions of dollars. They're spending billions of dollars on illegal aliens, and they're also spending more billions on illegal aliens they're not talking about. The unseen costs. the health care costs when they show up at the emergency rooms, the cost of educating every kid that's here, every kid who's here whose parents are illegal or in our school system, and we're paying for that. The infrastructure costs of our sewer, our water, the public safety cost of the police and the fire and the EMTs that are handling all these calls and all these issues. The amount of money being spent on illegal aliens alone, forget all the other stuff, just what's being spent on that alone could balance the state budget.
Well, and again, here's what I would say. I agree. And when someone says, where would you cut? I'd say, look, about 2.5 years ago, we were running this state with $52 billion. We're now spending $62 billion, okay? The state was running fine on a $52 billion spend. So I think it's really a question of getting the spending under control, because there's an extra $10 billion. And guess what? We're all paying for it. If you're a family, you're a business, you're out there trying to make work, how are you paying for it? You're paying for it through your electricity bills. You're paying for it because you're not getting the local aid that you'd be getting if we weren't spending all this money. I mean, there's towns all over the state that are doing overrides because local police and local schools need more resources. With all that spending at the state level, I don't see nearly enough of it going back to the state. So we're all paying as it is. We are, we're spending an extra $10 billion to run this state compared to where we were 2.5 years ago. And you gotta start with getting spending under control, and then if we don't reduce the tax burden, people are going to continue to leave. UMass Benchmarks put out a great report this week that said the Massachusetts economy contracted at 4 times the national rate in Q1 of 25. 4 times. And why is it? Slower job growth, people are leaving. So long term, to get the state on track, you need people to stay, you need people to grow, and then you've got a broader base to support from a tax standpoint. But the current path of fewer people, fewer jobs, fewer companies, and exploding state spending is completely unsustainable, and Maura Healey's the only one to blame for that.
You know what I like about this guy?
Yeah.
You ask him a question,
Yes.
he answers the question, and when he's done, he stops talking. How many times do we have a candidate in here who think, as long as I don't interrupt, they're just going to keep talking and talking and talking?
Change the subject.
And I like that. That shows me someone who listens, and I appreciate that. Say the quiet part out loud for us. Why do the Democrats desperately want more and more and more illegal aliens being shipped into this state? What is their motivation? Why are they doing? People at home, when I say it on Facebook, don't want to believe me. When I say it, when I speak at college campuses, they challenge me every time. Tell people at home, and you're a smart guy. Why are the Democrats so obsessed with bringing more illegal aliens into Massachusetts and letting them stay here?
When Maura Healey was Attorney General, she tweeted extensively about her support for sanctuary cities, right? She supports sanctuary cities. She supports the current structure of the right to shelter law. She ran on the Lund decision. I mean, think about that. I mean, think about the Lund decision, which effectively has prohibited local and municipal law enforcement preventing with ICE. Those are her beliefs. Those are her positions. So when I look at her history on these issues, whether it's her commitment to sanctuary cities, whether it's the right to shelter law, and her refusal, for example, to give preference to homeless veterans, to give preference to Massachusetts citizens, and her support of the Lund decision, I see a candidate that has been sort of clearly focused on doing everything except addressing this crisis.
But why? Why are they so? What? It's not because they hate us, right? It's not because they're trying to destroy America. Why are they doing? Like, I have an idea, but I'm interested in what you think.
Healey's a career politician. When I look at her, I look at someone who is sort of playing to a national audience. She's going on CNN. She's going on the New York Times. She's poking the president in the eye. That's not good for Massachusetts, by the way. That's not helping Massachusetts. And I expect that her political ambitions in her party are a lot more important to her than maybe what is right for this country. When I listen to her and I see the national profile she's building, I see a career politician playing to sort of a national audience on the left versus a governor that could be fixing those things right here in Massachusetts.
One of the things that I see in Massachusetts that I think is hurting communities like Lawrence, Lowell, Worcester is this post commission. It's a civilian review board type of commission where there are a bunch of cop haters on it, and their job is to decertify cops that have not broken the law, but that they don't think have the moral, like politicians have a monopoly on moral turpitude, right? Would you change it? Would you do away with it? What are your thoughts on the post commission?
Look, I support law enforcement. A lot of my buddies from the Marine Corps became cops, and a lot of your local law enforcement are veterans. So I support them. I support the HALO Act that Zaro's talked about. We got to stand with the police, okay? We've got to
explain what the HALO Act is for the people at home.
The HALO Act is a proposal by Representative Zaros that would create a 25-foot buffer zone when ICE operations are happening and local law enforcement is working with ICE, there'd be a 25-foot buffer zone for protesters so that they can't interfere with the work that first responders and cops are doing. I support that.
What about the press, though? Wouldn't the press also have to stay 25 feet away?
This is focused on people that are interfering with arrests, all right? I mean, they are deporting convicted criminals. They are deporting convicted criminals. They should be let alone to do their work. I mean, law enforcement, no one works harder. It's a tough job. You're a first responder. They should be able to do their job without interference. To me, that's a common sense. It's a common sense policy. And Rep. Zaros is a longtime police chief from down at Cape. He knows these issues, and I applaud his focus on making sure that we protect those first responders and let them do their job. There's a lot of folks putting politics before public safety. Okay, when it comes to this area, I think it's got to stop. We got to protect people. We got to support local law enforcement.
I had Marilyn Petito Devaney, who was on the governor's council, on my show. I think it was a year ago when she lost, and she said something to me that I've been thinking about ever since, and it really bothers me. She said, in 35 years, Massachusetts has not dethroned, for lack of a better word, a judge in Massachusetts. Not one judge. You mean to tell me that all the judges, not one judge, has been removed for misconduct, for bad rulings, for bribery, for whatever? As governor, what can and what would you do about something like that?
Well, look, that's a great question. I admittedly I've not studied that one, but I'll tell you that we need judges here that respect the rule of law. Local law enforcement ought to be cooperating with ICE, and if there are judges that are blocking that, those are judges that are working against the interest of the people. So look, I think it's a full spectrum from judges to law enforcement. We've got to be working to cooperate, and we should be supporting ICE.
Make some news for us. Tell us something that nobody else knows about you, but will help you get some votes and we'll get you some publicity. Give us a story that's going to give us a breaking story. When we finish it, I get to write this down and I get to put it in the paper.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I've sailed 12,000 miles from San Diego to Kuwait and back on a ship that went about 8 knots per hour. So that was a long, slow
It took you
part
15
of my
years?
life.
How long did that take?
Oh, it's about 6 weeks over and 6 weeks back. And there's not a lot of people I know that have spent that long sort of floating on a 1960s style ship. But look, I'm a father of 3 young boys. You asked me why I'm in this race.
Yeah, I still don't get it, by the way.
I mean,
any normal person that steps into this environment just blows my mind that they would want to ruin their life like that.
I want this to be a state where they can raise their families and they can start businesses and they can chase their dreams. But at current course and speed, Tom, people are leaving. Students are leaving, and we got to turn that around. I want my kids to be here in 25 years. I don't want them to have departed the state like too many others.
So my friend Jack Roy, who is a Republican in Haverhill, asked me to ask you about the MBTA Act. We see that some communities are pushing back. Thank God there are some that are willing to push back. And then you see places like North Andover that used to be a real Republican town just embracing it and going as far left as they possibly can. What do you think about that?
Well, I support a full repeal of the MBTA Communities Act, and here's why. That is an example of administrative overreach. It's an example of a one-size-fits-all approach to a problem. It doesn't respect local conditions, local zoning, local infrastructure. Housing is important, right? I care about housing. There's a lot of ways to build more housing in the state by using incentives. For example, the state owns 100,000 acres of vacant land in and around Boston. That's land that could be developed by the state. They could give it to developers. I did a bunch of this. When I was at the T, we did transit-oriented development with cities like Quincy. They want the housing. They're happy to put condos up and down the red line. We built thousands of units. That's very different than coercing a small suburban town that does not have the infrastructure. I mean, some of the towns down on the South Coast, like Rehoboth and others, they don't have the infrastructure from a water and a sewage perspective to do it. There's other small towns that might have a small town character and 3,000 homes, and that law is requiring them to put 500 or 600 condominiums in place. Again, that's administrative overreach. It's just an example of a one-size-fits-all approach. So I don't agree with it. There's a lot of ways to solve the housing crisis, but I think that law should be repealed. And Senator Dooner and a few others have put forth a bunch of plans that I agree with. We could go back to the drawing board, and let's come up with a plan that works, that actually creates more housing through incentives rather than through state mandates.
Day one, what's your number one priority?
Cut taxes, cut fees.
But how do you do that with a legislature that wants to raise them 5 times more than what they already are?
Well, you start with leadership, right? You start with identifying the problem. And my view of Massachusetts, I love this state. I'm cheering for Massachusetts, but I think things are getting worse here, not getting better. When I look at the numbers.
When a guy like me starts thinking of leaving,
so
put the lights out.
I think where we're heading here, I think there's going to be a much greater appetite for the sort of change we need in a year or so than there may be right now. But it starts with leadership, right? A Governor Shortsleeve would lead with those things. We'd focus on it. And I think if you start with leadership, you're gonna get things done. What you can't do, which is what Healy's done for the last 3 years, is just focus on growing the state budget and raising taxes. That is the wrong path.
When COVID hit, when COVID first hit, most people who were in leadership positions in government gave no thought to the First Amendment. They gave no thought to people's freedoms. They gave no thought to the Constitution, and everything was, well, it's an emergency situation, so we could do whatever we want, right? We can stop people from having backyard barbecues. Nobody ever asked this question of people who run for governor. If you become governor and an emergency hits, it could be anything. It could be a tornado out west. It could be anything, a flood, whatever. How do you plan on handling MEMA, right? MEMA is kind of like the state version of FEMA. How would you handle MEMA, and what would you do a change with MEMA? To handle the situation, but also while handling the situation, not encroach upon people's rights the way they did during COVID.
Well, what I wouldn't do is shut down the economy. What I wouldn't do is close schools. I mean, we will be feeling the impacts of those school shutdowns for years to come. People can see it in their kids. Mm-hmm. Kids missed a year and a half of school. There are small businesses that closed that never reopened. So when I look back at it, I think the closure of the economy and the closure of the schools, given what we've learned since then, are things we're going to be paying for a long time. I think government needs to exercise a lot of restraint, and you got to think about the costs and the benefits of when you do things like that. So if I was running MEMA and we had an emergency, look, if the tree's falling on the building, you fix that. That's an emergency. But the broad-based use of emergency declarations for extended periods of time is trouble. And let's come back to the auditor's report yesterday. Mm-hmm. The Healy administration.
Stunning. People need to read that. So stunning.
You know what? And they put a state of emergency in place. And as a result, they ignored competitive bidding. Mm-hmm. They did sweetheart deals. They did no-bid contracts. They gave millions of dollars to connected vendors. And it was all done under the guise of the emergency. So, look, I think you got to be extremely careful giving state and local government the ability to declare emergencies, because if you tell local government, if you declare an emergency, you can waive all the rules. Guess what's going to happen, Tom? You're going to get a lot of emergencies. Yep. And I would argue, looking at the auditor's report,
they'll create emergencies just so they can break the rules.
And the auditor's report is clear about that. I mean, as I listened to her on Dan Ray last night, and what she said is the emergency procurement rules are for 2 to 3 weeks. Then you do competitive bidding. The Healy administration, in area after area, completely ignored that, and we're paying for it. You're paying for it.
But there's no accountability. There's no accountability. If you win, you're not going to prosecute these people for what they did. We keep hearing that Donald Trump's going to prosecute people at the federal level for all the stuff that DOJ is finding. I have zero faith that that's ever going to happen. I've never seen anybody in government, except a few people at the low level. They make it look good. Are you going to get in there, and are you going to start prosecuting people? If you become governor, who, while this administration was in office, was breaking the rules, was breaking the laws, I ask Diana Joglu this every time she comes on the show. She says, I did an audit. We found fraud in EBT. We found fraud in this. We found fraud in this. And I say, well, who went to jail? Who got arrested for that? Who was prosecuted for the fraud that you're finding? She says, well, my job is to find the fraud. It's the AG's office to prosecute. But as the governor, you'd have a lot of say in that.
It is, and I'll tell you, speaking of the AG, what the AG ought to be doing right now is using her ability to sue the legislature and get that audit done of the legislature. I mean, look at that. I mean, we have an AG that has launched multiple lawsuits against Donald Trump. What would be probably more useful for the state would be to sue the legislature to comply with that audit. I mean, that's a perfect example of transparency. It's something that the AG could do. And by the way, Governor Healy, where's she on the audit?
Right.
When was the last time we heard from her?
But I want the bus company that charged $12,000 for one guy to take a bus ride because of all this money that we're spending on illegal aliens. I want those people to go to jail because we know that those people aren't just making money because it fell through the system. Whoever runs that company, whoever owns that company is a donor to somebody, and that's how they got the contract in the first place. I am the average person out there when we sit down, we have a coffee somewhere at a political function or an event, across the board, Democrat, Republican, Independent. People are sick of no accountability. People are sick and tired of, we're going to fix it, we're going to move on, that was yesterday. They want people to be held accountable. And when we start making people, holding people accountable, then people have more faith in the system. But just fixing the problem isn't good enough anymore. The system is so far gone that unless you drag people off in handcuffs and make an example out of them so it doesn't happen. Look, Suzanne Bump found millions and millions of EBT cards, cash cards, walking out of the Lawrence office. We did 3 front-page stories on it. And when she was leaving office, I asked her, what's one of your biggest regrets? And she said, not one person got held accountable. I want a governor that's going to come in, and I don't care how you do it, what power you use. I want people to stop being held accountable.
Well, let me give you an example of driving accountability at a public agency. I stepped into the T in 2015. I was enjoying my life in the business world, by the way, Tom. I love building companies. Governor Baker called me.
A year from now, you're going to be saying the same thing about being governor.
Well, the T had imploded in 100 inches of snow, and the Gov called me and said, I have a mission for you. You got to give me 2 years of your life, and you're going to go in with drive reform at the T. So I told him I'd do it, and we stepped in. When I stepped in there, we're spending $200,000 a day on overtime. $200,000 a day. We had an employee who would bill the taxpayers for 2,700 hours of overtime on top of 2,000 hours of regular time. Tom, that is literally more hours than there are waking hours in the year. So what did we do? And by the way, that particular individual had been signing his own timesheet for years. Everyone's looking the other way. No one's paying attention.
Did he go to jail? We want these people to go to jail because it's never going to change until someone goes to jail.
Yeah, so what we did, we put policies in place. We put strict rules in place. Every Friday, we went through the numbers. And you know what happened with transparency on that topic of overtime? We dropped that overtime bill by 40% in the first 6 weeks. That's accountability. And by the way, we moved a lot of people out of the organization that were abusing that system. There were fewer people in those roles when I was finished with the overtime and the absenteeism work than there were prior. So, look, I believe in accountability, and often it means you gotta move people out. We don't see that enough in state government. I think when I read that audit of Healy this week, I just see example after example of sort of Beacon Hill completely off the rails. No one's paying attention. We got no bid contracts, sweetheart deals, and where's the accountability? And I didn't hear much from Governor Healy today other than to say these are all problems that that she inherited. And I think it's clear that's not the case.
What I didn't hear is that you're going to put people in jail.
Anyone who's broke the law is going to jail.
Okay, that's what I wanted. How are we doing on time, intern girl?
We're doing pretty good. We're at 52 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So we got about 8 minutes left. You don't have to use them all if you don't want to. Is there anything I haven't covered? There must be at least one topic that I didn't bring up that you expected or that you were ready for or that you want to talk about.
Well, look, I always love talking about jobs in the economy because at the end of the day, in this state, it's all about small business. 60% of the people that work here work in small business, all of our growth. And I care a lot about creating ways to get this economy growing more quickly. So, when I look at the priorities we have, it's always got to come back to making the state more affordable, but making it a place where we can grow and scale businesses. So there's a very long list of very specific things we need to do to reduce the regulatory load on small business, to reduce taxes, to make it a better place to do business. And those are all things that I would focus on. And I would also tell you in that vein that new business creation is so important. I mean, we have more businesses closing in Massachusetts now than we do opening. It wasn't that long ago. Between 2010 and 2020, we were the fastest growing state in the whole Northeast. So we got to move back to that.
You talked a little bit about, and I want to close on this because you mentioned it several times, and I neglected to ask. You seem very passionate about being a business guy. What businesses have you run? What is your what have you been doing in the business world?
Yeah, well, the firm that I built called M33 Growth, we invest in small companies and help them scale. So we find small businesses, 20, 25 employee companies. For example, they might be building incredible software to help convenience stores manage operations and compliance. And we help them grow, we help them scale, we help them do acquisitions, and we sort of help the small companies become big companies. Mm-hmm. Those small businesses are the backbone of the American economy. and I've always enjoyed helping them scale, helping them grow. It's really in this state we live in, we're a knowledge economy. All the growth is on the small business side, and I don't see a single thing that Governor Healy has done to make life easier for small businesses. In fact, I would say her policies when it comes to taxes and spending and fees are probably the most anti-business policies we've ever seen. And the result is people are leaving, companies are leaving, businesses are leaving. I also would please ask your listeners to check us out at www.brianshortsleeve.com. We'd love to get you involved. We'd love your support. We're getting a great response out there, and I'd like to get people involved.
I have one more question from a viewer, Kevin Druin, who's one of our staples here on the show. He says, "What's your view on boys pretending to be girls?" Playing against girls in sports, and I would also add using bathrooms and showers in public schools.
Boys should not be playing girls' sports.
Okay. There you go, Kevin. So tell people how they can get in touch with you, your email. You gave your website, but your email, if maybe a phone number, and Intern will put it in the comments as people watch this later on.
Yeah, www.brianshortsleeve.com. You can also hit me at brianshortsleeve@gmail.com, and I've got a campaign email address as well, which is shortsleeve at shortsleeve26.com. So reach out. We'd love to get people involved. We're doing a lot of grassroots. We're out there all the time, and I'd love to get people on board.
When is your next public event? Do you have anything?
Next week, we've got a great set of Republican town committees coming up.
Nice.
We're going to be in Rochester, right? I believe we're going to be in Somerset, Rochester. We're going to be visiting with some good friends down there for a local event.
Yeah, so you have an overwhelming amount of questions here. So, take a look at those later on if you have a chance.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Would you commit to doing a debate? Is there anybody else in the race between you, besides you and Keneally?
No, Mike and I are the only two.
Would you be interested in doing a debate here on the show?
Sure, love that.
You've seen my kind of questions. It's going to be the exact same thing, except when I do a debate, it's actually a debate. It's not a forum. I throw out a question. I'm going to let you guys talk to each other about it. And I only jump in if somebody gets way too much time with them monopolizing.
Sounds like fun.
I would love to see you do that. I'm going to try and get him on the show, although I've been torturing him so much on Twitter, he probably won't come on.
He will.
But he might, because sometimes...
He's a Republican. He will. He's smart.
Might. All right, I'm going to leave you with that. Somebody wants me to ask you about Donald Trump. I don't know if it's relevant. He's going to be president when you're governor if you win. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, look, we got to do what's right for Massachusetts. And let me give you an example of what's not helpful for Massachusetts is political grandstanding by Governor Healy and sticking, her finger in his eye. If I were governor, we'd be working to get the very best deal we can for this state. By the way, look at Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. She wanted to get a deal for the auto industry. What was her approach? Her approach was she went to the White House twice. She invited the president of Michigan. Why was she doing that? By the way, she probably wants to be president too. Why is she doing it? Because it's good for Michigan. And I would ask you, is Maura Healey helping or hurting this state by her political grandstanding?
Absolutely.
And I think we know the answer to that.
Yeah. All right, Brian Shortsleeve, he's a candidate for governor. Give you a website again.
www.brianshortsleeve.com.
brianshortsleeve.com. I appreciate you being here. We'd love to have you on again, and I'd certainly love to have you here for a debate. I also want to thank Holly Robichaux. I actually think you've got a shot at winning because you have someone like Holly Robichaux on your team. She knows her stuff. I've known her for a long time. And so good luck to you, and I hope that we'll have you back.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, why don't you roll up Melvin
Appreciate
Taylor,
it.
and we'll thank the sponsors again. Finally, we got Tomo in the rotation after 8 years. I don't know how that happened. Oh, boy. There we go. There's Melvin Taylor. By the way, this guy's from Lowell. He plays at Cambridge all the time. He's amazing. He wrote the opening song for our show.
Hi, Randy.
Oh, Randy's watching.
Yeah, Randy Carter just came in right now, yes. And Santiago Reyes as well. Big supporter of Brian.
Great.
All right, let's take our sponsor, Century 21 McLennan Real Estate, W3ON Website Development Enterprise Bank, Prime Insurance at Doug Mercurio Law Office, Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors, AFC Urgent Care, Clear Path for Veterans New England. Go down to Devon's and take a look at what they do down there. JG's Ice Cream, Tomo and Shaken Seafood, EIS Investigation and Gun Training. Oh, this list is getting longer and longer. Marsden and Son Construction, the Zany Pesci Law Office, and Century 21 McLennan Real Estate. It almost sounds like Melvin Taylor says we've got to go home.
Wow.
He did. He said you got to go home. So go home already.
Telling you to go home. Telling you to go home.